Welcome to 32 videos in 32 days, where I will be counting down the last 32 days before the NFL season begins with a preview for a different team every single day. Subscribe to the channel if you are new and click that post notification bell so you don't miss your favorite team's video. Today is day 7. We will be talking about the Carolina Panthers in the NFC South. If you are new to this series, the way that I do it is doing positives and negatives for every single team, as well as a record prediction and team awards by the end of the season. Let's get right into this one. For the Panthers, I think the positives are pretty easy, starting with the fact that they made the playoffs last year, and this defense, I think their defense looks freaking amazing. And honestly, it gives them a super high floor this season. Well, not super high, but it gives them a high floor. I think Devin Lloyd and Jalen Phillips were huge pickups for them. The only problem is they did have a few injuries, like Nick Scorton's not going to be playing this year. He tore his ACL, and they had an offensive lineman injury as well. I think they had a few other injuries, but the loss of Nick Scorton really does suck. But I still think that the defense is pretty solid. Jalen Phillips is now going to be rushing by himself, so I don't love the pass rush as a whole without Scorton, but Derek Brown on that defensive line is super good. Devin Lloyd in the middle is now really good. J.C. Horn is really good. Mike Jackson is really good. Their safeties are pretty solid. This defense actually looks like a pretty formidable unit that you can be pretty happy about. I also think the young talent on the offense is pretty solid with Tetero and McMillan, Jalen Coker. That's kind of it in their wide receiver core that I'm super high on, but I think Tommy Tremble's also a pretty decent tight end for them. Their offensive line is one of the better ones in the NFL. They have a pretty good infrastructure on this team. I also think Dave Canales is a pretty fantastic head coach. I think he's a really good offensive mind for this team. At baseline, this team has talent on the offensive side of the ball, and they have a really good defense. So they're going to be a solid team that you can't just mark off a win every single week. But they do have some big question marks. Before we get to my biggest question mark about this team, we're first going to talk about how the run game is not the best. Chuba Hubbard is all right, and he's shown flashes of greatness, and I don't have a reason to say that he can't have a pretty solid season because of the offensive line being really good and the fact that he's probably going to get #1 carries. But throughout the few seasons that Chuba Hubbard has played with Dave Canales at this point, it has been relatively clear that if you are not performing as well as you should be or as well as you can, you will be replaced with a different talent on this team. We saw Rico Dowdle get a lot of carries last year when Chuba Hubbard was either injured or didn't look amazing. And then when Rico Dowdle started to sputter off at the end of the season, Chuba Hubbard started to get more carries, and then he started to look rough, so they went to their third running back. And if Jonathan Brooks does look really good and as good as we thought he was going to be as a prospect, I can see Chuba Hubbard starting to get phased out of this offense pretty quick, and I'm just not 100% sold on this run game being 100% reliable because we don't know what we're going to get from Jonathan Brooks or Chuba Hubbard, and anybody after that we're not entirely sure about. And again, on the defensive side of the ball, I think it is a formidable unit, but the pass rush doesn't look nearly as good as we thought it was going to be without Nick Scorton, and that's one big issue that they had last season. And that's one big issue as to why this defense wasn't one of the better ones in the league. So if we're going to see the same pass rush that we saw last year, then I'm not entirely sure that this defense is going to look a crazy amount better, but they will look better no matter what with Devin Lloyd. And now the biggest problem to this team is Bryce Young. I've talked about it before. I just think that his physical limitations are too much for him to be better than he already is right now. At the baseline for Bryce Young, he can be a player that can make some big plays, he can have some high leverage moments, and he can do some good things. But I don't think he has a good trait at anything at quarterback except for leadership. I think he's a solid leader, which is why they went 8-9 and won the division last year. I also think that he's relatively clutch. I think he can make some very clutch plays, and he has in his career, but I don't think he has a great arm. I don't think he has great athleticism. I don't think he has good play recognition. I don't think he has the best pocket presence. None of the most important key quarterback traits are things that Bryce Young has. So unfortunately, I think he's going to be a major limiting factor to this offense and a major limiting factor to this team until there's a different quarterback there, unfortunately. Like, I love rooting for Bryce Young, and I wish that he could be better than he is. I think we've already seen the best version of Bryce Young that we will ever see. Now let's get to these record predictions. Now, Carolina has a first place schedule this season, so it will be difficult for them to win as many games as they did last year. I think that they can pull off a win against Chicago just because their defense is as good as it is. Like, again, the pass rush, it just doesn't look amazing, but I think their secondary is good. I think their linebackers are good. And I think they can squeak one out against Chicago in week 1. Then they're going to lose week 2 against Atlanta. I just think that that's a divisional game. You never know. I think they'll beat Cleveland. Cleveland's one of the worst teams in the league just through and through. So they're going to be able to win that one. And I think Detroit's going to be able to beat them. I think they have a good offense. I think their defense is solid enough to be able to hold down the Panthers and win that game. And they'll go into their bye week in week 5 at 2-2. Then coming out of their bye week, they play Philly. Now, here's the thing with Carolina and what they've done the past few seasons. They've been a team that can sneaky upset teams. I think that they'll upset the Philly. Now, I think Philly is a far superior team. Don't forget what I just said. Far superior. Philly will probably go into this game either undefeated or maybe lose one game. They're going to be massive, like, overdogs in this game. I just think Carolina's just going to catch them off guard and win this game. They'll go 4-2. They're going to beat Tampa Bay in week 7. They're going to look pretty solid. They're going to lose to Green Bay. I think they're the better team. They're going to lose to Denver. They're going to lose to New Orleans. They're going to lose to Baltimore. They're going to lose to Tampa Bay. They're going to lose to Minnesota. I think the second time around, they're going to split the season series with New Orleans, and they'll finally win another game and be 5-8. And then they'll go against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's the better team. I think they're going to be able to win that game. I think that they can beat Pittsburgh. Again, I have my reservations about Pittsburgh this year. I don't think that they're the best team in the world. And I just think we're going to see a lot of regression out of Pittsburgh, especially with their quarterback situation. Maybe they're playing a different quarterback at this point. I'm not even sure, but I think they can beat them. And then I just don't think they're beating Seattle. Seattle's just a really, really good football team. So this year, they're going to be slightly worse than they were last year and be 7-10. And with the first place schedule and a couple injuries on this team, I think it makes sense for this team to not win 8 games like they did last year, especially with the variance that they're going to have with the 1-score games that they had last year. I just think there's too much going against them for them to be as good as they were last year. But I am higher on them than some people are with that variance. Again, I think they'll finish with like 7 wins. Again, they're a team that I think can pull off an upset against any of these teams at any point. They did it last year, but I don't think it'll happen as often as it did last season. Now let's get to the end of season award predictions. At MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, a guy I think is going to solidify himself into possibly a top 10 wide receiver position, Tetairoa McMillan. I think he's a fantastic player. He's just such a dynamic wide receiver who can do anything on the field at any point. And I feel like he's this team's best player, and he will win MVP. And I think he's like one of the only wide receivers I've chosen out of all of the teams that you're going to see of these previews. I just think he's that good. I think he's an amazing player. At Defensive Player of the Year, I chose Devin Lloyd. Last season, he was one of the best NFL players at creating turnovers. I think he's a game wrecker. He's one of the better middle linebackers in all of football, especially after last season. Maybe last season was a one-off year, and that totally can be a possibility. Maybe he gets injured because he is an injury-prone player. But I have a lot of faith in Devin Lloyd coming into this defense and being a fantastic player. At my Breakout Player of the Year, I have Jalen Phillips. I think he's going to have at least 10+ sacks. It's going to be a little bit harder for him now that Nick Scorton's not there, taking a little bit of that attention away. But I still think he's going to be great. And as long as he can stay healthy, he's another injury-prone player. But as long as he can stay healthy, I think the Panthers are going to have a really, really good pass rusher on the outside, as well as the fact that I think Jalen Phillips is one of the better run defenders on the outside when he plays. So I can expect Jalen Phillips to have a pretty solid year. And then I forgot to say it when I said the Defensive Player of the Year, but the addition of the offseason will also be Devin Lloyd, of course. That'll be it for my preview for the Panthers. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that post notification bell so you don't miss your favorite team's video. And I will see you guys tomorrow.